Hi everyone, welcome to the first ever episode of Demand Decoded.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of Demand Decoded.
Hi everybody, welcome to episode 10 of Demand Decoded. Hi everybody, and welcome to episode 15 of Demand Decoded.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. Thanks for tuning in and taking the time to join us today. Hi everyone, welcome to a special episode of Demand Decoded. We're taking a look back at some of the best bits of 2023. It's safe to say that starting this podcast has been one of the most exciting things in 2023 itself. And to have so many great guests on to discuss demand generation in such detail and to engage with so many B2B marketers throughout recording has been a true pleasure. So from myself and the entire team at Blend, thanks so much for tuning in to Demand Decoded. I hope we've been able to provide some value to you this year, and we look forward to bringing you even more content next year. If you have enjoyed the podcast, we'd really appreciate you leaving us a 5-star review and hitting the follow button. It would help us out massively. So let's get into the first clip, and let's throw it all the way back to episode 1, where Phil and I were talking about shifting from gated to ungated content. Phil shared some great insight on the fundamental issues with gated content, the benefits of ungating it, and offered an alternative optional download strategy for those of you looking to make the transition.
In essence, the fundamental, the most critical issue is that buyers increasingly are avoiding downloading content like that because of what it leads to, because of the giving away of their privacy, because of the enrolling in workflows and sequences and emails and all the lead nurturing events that come afterwards. So even more than in 2017, actual serious buyers are circumventing that whole part of your sort of marketing journey. And critically, if your buyers are not seeing it, they're not able to infer your credibility, your expertise, your knowledge on the subject from it, because they haven't got the ability to see it. And so the people who are seeing it are not likely to enter your pipeline, and the people who are likely to enter your pipeline are not going to be building trust and affinity with your brand as a result of it. So that's the biggest flaw we've got there. I think the biggest benefit is trust. The trust that you can drive and achieve by letting buyers see that content, see your knowledge laid out without having to give away their contact details for it. Because of course, if they can consume that content, they can build, trust, affinity, preference for you based on it without having to open themselves up to lead nurturing emails, cold calls, and the like. In addition, you've got that SEO benefit, which is if that content is adapted for search engine optimization, Google can now index that content, which it can't do when it's in a PDF behind a form. It can rank it potentially for a pretty competitive short tail term, something informational. And with your blog posts and your social content leading into it, it can really boost your traffic numbers overall. And the two sort of feed into one another, a virtuous cycle, if you like, because you'll be discovered by more people view and consume the content freely and make a decision to inquire. So that can those two things drive one another to even greater levels. I think it's always sensible to offer people a downloadable version of something, because there are situations and there are mediums where it's preferable, right? So making things easy for buyers, removing friction, is a big part of what we do. So I think having that, and if you go to our pillar pages, you'll find that nearly all of them, if not all of them, are available to download as an option. The question is then, do you use that download as a means of gathering contact data? And this is where we had a bit of a debate. And I think you can argue it either way. Where I ended up settling was that there is no harm in generating an audience of people who want to be in your audience and who want to receive information like the information they're consuming presently. Now, as long as you don't get sort of confused about who they are, as in they are not people who are probably going to buy from you in the next 1 or 2 years in most cases, and therefore how you treat them as as a contact, as a piece of data in terms of what you send them and when and why. I think as long as you act cautiously and with respect there, you can use optional download as a way to generate an audience who can be, part of your sort of amplification uh, tools, if you like. They can share your content, they can spread the word, and they can be engaged with your business over a long period of time. But just don't expect to be able to nurture them through the purchase process over 3 or 5 emails and turn them into a buyer, because that we've just not seen work out.
Now, let's dive into a moment from episode 14, the State of B2B Marketing, where we were incredibly excited to have Kip Bodnar, Chief Marketing Officer at HubSpot, join us to talk about the B2B marketing landscape and where he sees things heading.
Yeah, so when you think about B2B marketing, I think a lot of times people go directly into like the strategies of B2B marketing and how they've changed. The important thing to start with is that marketing, I'm going to say marketing in general, whether it be B2B or B2C marketing, is just an output of culture and cultural evolution, right? And so how does, when we started HubSpot, Brian and Ramesh started HubSpot, they were like, oh, the internet changed the way people shop and buy things. And so businesses need new tools to help them adapt to those changing ways. Turns out that statement is basically constantly true, right? That human culture and things are constantly evolving. You have to change with them. And so when you think about B2B marketing specifically, right? The late 2000s, basically through, the pandemic, we're all about, very heavy inbound marketing. They were largely content creation, search engine optimization, all of those strategies, very effective, still very effective, but somewhat less effective because we're on the precipice of the next generation of societal change, right? And that societal change is large language models through artificial intelligence that are going to disrupt the way people interact with technology, the way they have just democratized understanding and intelligence of information. The internet, like inbound marketing, was all about giving people access to information. Now that's no longer enough. With artificial intelligence, we have access to intelligence, which is a very different place to be in. But even if you're like not aboard the AI hype train, you can sit back and objectively look and say that, oh, the internet has fundamentally changed a lot over the last couple of years. And the reason for that is, first of all, advertising has gotten disaggregated, which means used to be, oh, Meta and Google were the only advertising games in town. Wow, the Reddit advertising business has gotten big. The TikTok advertising business is going big. Uber's making $5 billion a year from advertising now. If you start looking at it, wow, the decentralization of advertising, all of these creators who are doing kind of one-to-one partnerships with brands, like that is a massive change. And B2B marketers can take advantage of that change and find new opportunities in their advertising. The second part of that, that's I think fairly obvious, is search is also unbundling with the advertising. Like we're not just searching in Google, we're searching in Google, TikTok, YouTube, Reddit, like ChatGPT, Anthropic, like whatever it may be, whether it be between large language models, marketplaces, and social networks. Search is heavily decentralized now.
Now, let's throw it back to episode 2, where Amanda McGrath, commercial director here at Blend, provides a great piece of advice to marketers. She discusses why marketers often struggle to demonstrate their value and how you can overcome this struggle.
For many marketers, they are having to bridge a gap in understanding between themselves and the C-suite. Marketing as a discipline, it has a lot of its own language, jargon, certainly, which I think we can all be guilty of. And its metrics can seem when they're not necessarily the right metrics, seem very abstract to the C-suite from their goal, which is the growth of the business. And why is that? I suppose it's largely because those organizations, that C-suite is often made up of people who founded the business, and they may well have done so not really needing marketing, either by building their idea, their concept, using the power of their existing networks, people they'd worked with at previous companies, or it can be because they've come from very different backgrounds into an existing company, but ultimately the truth is that most C-suites are not made up of people who have done marketing at the coalface. They'll come from sales perspective, or they will have come from a technical background, let's say, be the people who made the product or put the service that the company offers to the world together in the first place. Marketing probably doesn't come naturally to them. What they are focused on primarily is going to be the growth of the business. And it can, I think, in those kind of environments, seem like marketing is a small piece of the puzzle, if a piece of the puzzle at all. Maybe it's a nice to have, not a need to have in their minds. So you really do have to bridge that gap in understanding. I think that is ultimately why it is so hard for marketers to make ground and feel like they have a seat at the table when it comes to the board, definitely. And certainly when it comes to kind of the initiatives that marketing needs to do, when they want to do things like rebrand, build a new website, go to market with a new product, they are often having to make a case for investment that could be perceived as cost, which is a really hard thing to do. You've got to, and to do that well, ultimately you need to have empathy. What does the board want to understand? They ultimately want to understand how what you are suggesting isn't going to make them look better, sound better. How is it going to turn into results, the same results that they look at? So, how does it tie into the business's objectives? How marketers kind of develop that's probably another question, but it really does. The real challenge for them is making sure that they are well understood in that space, and the best way to do that is to understand what matters to the C-suite.
So the next clip is a shameless plug for myself. This is from a special episode of Demand Decoded, where we showcased our inbound demand generation methodology, which is essentially a marketing approach that B2Bs can adopt to align with today's buyer preferences. During this episode, I talked through exactly how inbound demand generation aligns to the complex buyer journey that we have today. So yeah, basically I want to cover why inbound demand generation is so effective for converting today's buyers. And I really wanted to go back to this graphic of today's buyer journey from Gartner. And, this just shows how complex buyer journeys can be. Buyers use different channels in different ways at different times, sometimes repeating actions and jumping around in such unexpected and unpredictable ways. So when you don't look at the buyer journey like this, and instead you look as a traditional linear path, they do step 1, step 2, step 3 in a straight line, and you miss this complex journey, you end up also missing critical elements on the journey too. So instead of focusing on the big picture here, you hyper focus on forcing buyers down artificial funnels to follow a path that you have formed for them to take. And this forces buyers to do things that they don't like and breaks their individual preference for discovery, research, and evaluation. And I mean, really, it results in them looking for information elsewhere, because then that supports the journey that they want to take. So my point is here, the buyer journey is complex. It covers a huge amount of interactions, and that means you need to find a method that somehow touches all of these interactions and aligns with the complexity of the journey that you can see here. And that is where inbound demand generation comes in. So what you're seeing here is an example of inbound demand generation activities. And I want to talk you through exactly how this method aligns to the complex buyer journey that I just showed, the graphic from Gartner that we have today. So firstly, on the left, you'll see the 3 stages of demand generation that Phil just spoke through: create, capture, and convert. And firstly, you've already done a great thing by mapping out your tactics and activities against these stages. You're putting yourself in a really good position to influence as much of the buyer journey as possible, not just focusing on capturing demand through search or converting it. You're influencing as much as you can, right? Now, on the far right-hand side, you'll see the block of branding, technology, and optimization. And obviously, these things run throughout everything you do. They don't just operate in one stage. Branding even goes beyond marketing. It's the heart of your entire business and defines how customers perceive you. Technology, enables you to scale, report, collaborate across your business. And then with everything that you do, you can't just set and forget it. Continuously optimize everything and test, report, and then repeat that. So when it comes to the actual juicy stuff in the middle, the activity, you'll see that the arrows are trying to illustrate everything works together. There are no siloed efforts here. You don't have blogs targeting a certain ICP, emails nurturing a different group of contacts, social channels up in, space targeting and talking to a different audience. Everything is integrated and works together for one single output, which is high intent website conversions. That's buyers knocking on your door and asking to talk to you, whether that's a talk to sales form or a demo request, a trial. No matter what, it's buyers interested and explicitly saying they're interested in your offering. And this approach brings you as close as possible to the complex buyer journey we just saw again, because it aligns to the same goal. All buyers want to do is learn, research, and evaluate in their own preferred ways, and then contact you when they're ready. And all we're trying to do here is give buyers everything they need to learn, research, and evaluate, and then give them the easiest path through an exceptional website experience to contact you when they're ready on their own terms. Next, we have a clip from episode 11, Building a High Impact B2B Community, where we were joined by community expert Katie Ray. She's community director at Metadata and has built a hugely successful community called Demand from the ground up. As well as sharing some fascinating insight on how to go about building a community, she actually spoke about some of the hard truths when it comes to running a community. And here's a moment that really resonated with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest hard truths that I always try and hone in on, because it's a tough conversation to have, is while everyone that you talk to at your company will probably be like, "Oh, we're so excited about community," unless there's KPIs tied to it, you're not probably going to get the support that you need. And it's honestly to no fault of their own. It's just the fact that we're all doing so much right now. And unless there's something tied to it, even if you did spiffs, I don't even know how efficient that would be. And so, a company I had worked at before, I remember it was like pulling teeth. And since I wasn't a part of the marketing team, all of my design requests kind of got bumped. And I remember talking with our CEO, and he had no idea that we had launched a community. And he was like, "I'm sorry, who are you?" And I was like, "I've been here almost a year. We launched this community. You let me spend like $75,000. Like, you signed off on all this." And it was like the most upsetting thing, because community has to be a backbone of your company type effort. It has to go top down. And so if you're not able to get the support you need to be able to find people within the company that can help you get it. Because, you'll find a few people that'll want to help volunteer, and then they just get busy and life happens. You can't be upset at them because it's not really their job. And so like I said, unless you're tying it to KPIs, then it's going to be really, really difficult to get the support that you need. So I think that's a huge, hard truth.
We're back with Phil again for this next clip from the episode Adapting to Evolving Buyer Preferences for Marketing Success. And in this clip, he talks about the situation with buyer behavior today and discusses the things that buyers really want from you.
The situation today is that buyers are, as reported not just by us, but by Gartner and others, they're doing much more of the purchase process independently, meaning they're sourcing and consuming information anonymously, privately, without giving up their details, without entering the lead pool, without converting to download stuff that they know they can get elsewhere freely. They're acting in a very unpredictable, non-linear manner. So, you can't build a model of the funnel, as it were, and expect each and every buyer that eventually does buy to follow the steps as you precisely describe them. It doesn't happen in that linear direction. They're doing different parts of the research process at a completely unpredictable rate, going backwards and forwards in ways you would never have expected, and not at all in a linear fashion. They've got more ways and places to find and discover and consume information than ever before, and they use them. And that's part of what I think is a symbiotic relationship between the landscape that buyers are in and the buyer behaviors, which tend to push one another along to a degree. We might talk about that in a bit more detail in a moment, but they are not just talking to salespeople or downloading ebooks and white papers or receiving newsletters. There are far more ways and places to find them and reach them. As I said, privacy is a concern for everybody, and at the same time, they know what the impact of giving that up is, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And then, finally, salespeople, sales processes are still very important, but they are reserved now for the very last part of the purchase process, because they have been, to a certain degree, over many years, burned. Let's face it, by what salespeople and advertisers say, which is not always in their best interests, completely impartial or truthful. Now, I know that everybody watching is always impartial, truthful, and acts in their buyers' best interests, but en masse, buyers' experience of marketing, advertising, and sales is not necessarily that. So it has meant that they've shifted away from trusting and engaging with them earlier.
This next clip is from the episode Killer Website UX Tips, where Phil was joined by Jasmine, who is a strategist and certified UX designer here at Blend, to cover the important elements of UX for demand-generating websites. In this clip, Jasmine talks about the importance of familiarity and actually gives one of my favourite analogies to date.
When we are trying to engage with website visitors or users or buyers, when they're in the researching phase of trying to find what products and services they want to use and buy from, they are going to be comparing you with different competitors. So if we take something like Teams, Slack, and Discord, they are in essence the same service. They have a kind of a chat feature, some kind of functionality that connects with other softwares, and they allow you and your teams to communicate efficiently and integrate with all your different kind of softwares. And if I, as a business, am trying to go out and look for which of these solutions do I want to use, I am going to be going to their websites as part of my fact-finding mission and process in the buyer journey. And based off of what I see there, I'm going to form an opinion about what kind of products and services they offer and if it's right for me. So this fits into the whole user experience things where UX can it's a Venn diagram of lots and lots of different things. So it's the branding, it's the design, it's the way that you engage and interact with the website, but also the kind of messaging and information that you can get when you're on there. So anyone listening or joining in now, if you just open a couple of tabs and you go to those websites, so Microsoft Teams, Slack, and Discord, you're going to see that they are very, very different in the way that they present themselves, but the building blocks, so the very fundamental elements of how they present these pieces of information that's vastly different, is the same. So the user experience of being on the website and finding information is going to be essentially the same. And that's because as website visitors, we have very limited attention spans. I'm not going to go to one of these websites and try to figure out a very funky looking navigation or trying to find where I need to go to get the information I'm wanting. So having that user experience in mind, just saying that simplify things, make it easy for you to find the information, understand if this product is meant for you, that's part of the bigger picture of good UX. So I think if we take another example and bring it offline, away from website, it's still applicable to website, and we think about hotels. So if we visit a Hilton hotel or Holiday Inn, the basic building blocks of what they offer and what you see and experience when you step into that lobby is going to be the same. You go up to reception area, you check in, you get your key card, go to the lift, elevator, and then go up to your floor and check into your room. That is going to be the same. It's the same building blocks. But when you're there, the branding and the design and all of those elements, they breathe and feel and give you different perception of what a stay at the Hilton or a stay at the Holiday Inn is going to be. So when we talk about UX websites, it's, again, I'm going to be reiterating this over and over again, basically, but it's the same idea where these basic building blocks should be intuitive. People need to know, they are going to know from previous experience where they should go look for the reception area or the navigation of the website, if you will. We don't want to offer them shocking surprises. We can have some slight deviation on the theme, but we wouldn't want to put a jack in the box in the middle of the lobby, for example, and say, go speak to their AI robot instead of a human, because people are not going to know what to do. Same thing with websites.
Now let's dive into one of our more tactical episodes, amplifying B2B marketing with LinkedIn and Google Ads. These channels are probably the most used in B2B, but also the most misunderstood. In this clip, Chrissy, head of strategy at Blend, breaks down exactly where each channel fits in the buyer journey and when to leverage them.
So what you're currently seeing on your screen is LinkedIn on the left-hand side and Google on the right-hand side. The placement is intentional because what it represents that both platforms are utilized as part of the PPC process, part of reaching your audience, but they're completely different channels with different user behavior exhibited on both of them. So if I talk you through why they are where they are. So you can see an arrow at the top of the two channels, and what essentially it means that from the left-hand side towards right, user is moving from being not in the market, they're just going about their day, they are not actively looking for a solution to their problem, all the way to the right-hand side when they are in market, when they are actively looking for what is their problem at that point in time, either as part of a research process or genuinely there and then, I have a problem, I need a solution. So that is the placement of the platforms. And each of those platforms is optimal to communicate at those two stages with the user. And to illustrate maybe through a reverse example, you would not be utilizing Google to create demand about something that has no search volume, for example, because there are no users looking for that particular solution to the problem. And vice versa, you would not be utilizing LinkedIn to sell items that solve the problem there and there. You would be more of a top of funnel and middle of the funnel to use that comparison platform. And generally both platforms are absolutely crucial in reaching your target audience because of these different stages where the user is. And of course, maybe we will go into more detail about the specifics on each, so maybe I'll leave this here. But this essentially summarizes how do each of the platforms fit within the wider buyer journey, and the fact that they are not the same. You can't utilize exactly the same thinking for both platforms, so you have to tailor your strategy to each of them.
This next clip is from the episode Unlocking the Untapped Potential of Your Current Website. I thought it was an important one to include because we haven't spoken much about SEO a huge amount on the podcast this year, yet it's still such a vital element of demand generation. It doesn't get the love it used to, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work anymore. In this clip, Phil talks about the importance of different types of website content and the power of internal linking to capture demand in search.
And so when it comes to SEO, I think it's important to really think clearly about where the different types of content that are on your website fit into the buyer journey, into the purchase process. And let that guide your thinking about how much you invest in its presentation, how you lay it out, how you structure it, design it, and organize it, and so on. In the context of SEO, that means using articles, blog articles, for example, to target long tail queries that your buyers are using as part of the research process. Blog articles still very, very effective at being found by buyers who are asking Google and Bing their questions. So articles aimed at long tail queries, will help you to increase your SEO footprint in a way, get more buyers onto your site around the context of their problems and the diagnosis that they're going through. So that's important. But the role of that content is not only to get those people in at that stage, is to support your discoverability for shorter, more competitive, commercial, and to some degree informational keywords. So the things that buyers use when they're further along the purchase process. And this is key. So you need your website pages, your services, your products, your solutions to be found when buyers enter commercial keywords into search engines. And the better you are found, the higher up you are, the more quality traffic you're going to receive and the more opportunities you're going to have to create pipeline from those visitors. And the number one way to do that, before you tackle anything else, is internal linking. And so, one thing that I encourage a lot of people to do is think about the keywords that describe in buyer language their offering, their solution, which are ultimately the keywords they want to be found for, and see how well they've internally linked around that term. So go to Google, type in site, your domain, and then the keyword that you need to be found for. And Google will return all the pages on your site that feature that keyword, most of which will probably be blog articles. Now check how frequently, how consistently you match exactly that keyword in those articles, if at all, to those commercial pages and those informational pages that are expected to rank for it. And in most cases, it's a huge opportunity. There's next to no exact match internal linking for the keywords that we want buyers to find us for. And if you go through and you implement that, and if you've got a large backlog of content on which to do it, even more important and even better, you can really, really impact where you're found, in the search results for those really, really vitally important commercial keywords. So exact match internal linking, which Google and other SEO tools can tell you exactly where your opportunities to do it are the first thing to take care of before you move on to other more nuanced versions of internal linking and SEO, such as linking between your blog posts and linking semantically to your keywords. Get that basic in place, and many times you'll be really surprised and impressed with the result that you get.
I know I'm awful, because here's another shameless plug of myself talking through our content framework. But in my defense, I thought it would be interesting for you to hear how we create such a huge amount of content that drives consistent inquiries for us. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll probably see that I'm a big fan of this checkered shirt and happen to have it in multiple colors. So yeah, enjoy me talking through how we produce content like this consistently at a large scale that drives inquiries. So yeah, I suppose what is our kind of content framework to kind of churn out a lot of content quite easily, but it's highly engaging, it gets a lot of reach, and yeah, it drives inquiries for us. So let's start with this, what we're doing right now. So we've started this LinkedIn Live series called Demand Decoded, but it wasn't kind of just a finger in the wind kind of guess, like, oh, LinkedIn have a live streaming kind of capability, like, let's use that. There was actually some thought behind it. So why did we choose LinkedIn Live as a format for us? So a few reasons. One, it allowed us to expand our reach significantly. Like we have a decent database of contacts that we could have promoted events to and things like that, but we actually knew more of our potential buyers and our audience, our market, are all on LinkedIn. So that's a great channel for us to use to amplify our events, to increase brand awareness, increase affinity for us. And that's ultimately where our audience are. So boom, LinkedIn ticked the box for audience. The second point was, you don't require any details to be submitted to actually join a LinkedIn Live event, unlike a traditional webinar where you'd have to, I mean, sometimes you get, tens of fields like asking you for all sorts of information, even if it's just name and email though, like having a live event that strips back all of that and just allows people to join, consume the content, go again without ever worrying if we're going to, send them spammy emails or cold call them. They don't have to worry about that. They can just get some hopefully useful insights and go about their day. But remember that we're the people that gave them that insight. And actually, one that I'm not sure many people think about is the retargeting possibilities that come from doing something like this and capturing information on LinkedIn. Like, it actually does allow you to then retarget people who have registered, like, again, within feed consumption, in feed, like video based sponsored ads and things like that. Like, again, we're not spamming anybody here, but it just allows you flexibility and then what you do further on LinkedIn with that audience that have watched your video. And I suppose doing it live was another thing, right? I wanted to pin you down and pin other people down in Blend to a set time that we're doing these things. So often when it comes to content creation and things like that, it can slip the net. It's not necessarily a priority always in everybody's eyes, and that's only natural. Things come up that are high priority, but actually for us, this works great as a way to pin this down for an hour or whatever, create a great piece of content that we can then use in other ways. So yeah, we start with a LinkedIn Live. That gives us this great piece of long form content that we can then do lots of other great things with, like just repurposing the long form piece of content itself. So we finish this, it's edited a bit, full length video goes out onto YouTube, and then the full length audio gets distributed to a podcast network that then puts it on, Spotify and Apple Podcasts, all of those great places. So then that's the long form piece. And then basically we take this live event, split the kind of 2, 3 to 5 core takeaways up into miniature clips that are easily digestible, gives you a bit of flavor for the event, but also just some key insights. Not everybody kind of has the time to sit through a full event like this, and it just helps it be easier to digest. And not a full hour of information often isn't what you actually get back from an event. You usually just take away like 3 to 5 things, and that's just what we distribute basically, and that gets more reach. But we can move on to measurement afterwards. So yeah, we've got the long form repurposing of this, then short form repurposing. We distribute that on LinkedIn, mainly organic. And like I know I said about organic before, kind of not necessarily working that great because of your audience, but it is still an important thing for us and other companies to do, because even when then like companies are interested in working with you, people are interested in working with you, then when they go onto LinkedIn and kind of see that you're creating all of this great content that they resonate with, they really kind of get your message, it's still beneficial to do it. But where we see way more engagement and way more benefit from our short form clips is paying to distribute them to our ICP, our target customer. Because ultimately they're the people that resonate most with this, because they're the people we're trying to talk to. So yeah, I mean, we just put them into a cold campaign and then a retargeting campaign based off of that, and just distribute great clips in the feed that they can then consume. And then, go into a couple of different retargeting layers. And then ultimately at the end, we see that they heard about us through LinkedIn, which is great. The other way that this is then used, which isn't necessarily a natural evolution of the live event, but it's within like blogging itself. So, for example, like the homepage solo event that you did on LinkedIn Live a couple of weeks ago. That was already a blog, but it could have been it could have been repurposed into a written blog article. But then also the full video or broken down parts of that video can then be uploaded to YouTube, embedded within the blog to get all of that great SEO benefit that we all know that you get from YouTube, and then all of a sudden you've got the blog ranking in the top 3 on Google, but then you've also got a video in there as well. You might also have 2 videos in there as well. So there's a lot of benefit that you can get from creating that one big long form piece of content and then just using it in as many ways as possible. The next clip is from episode 20, 7 tactics that will actually create demand in 2024. In this episode, I was joined by demand gen leader and LinkedIn voice, Sarah Brannock. And this was a really fun episode. We had a great discussion on all 7 of her tactics. So if you haven't listened to the full episode, it's definitely worth going back and listening to that. But here are 2 clips where Sarah talks about the power of personal branding and brand activations.
I hear from a lot of marketers that it's a very challenging time to do marketing. Of course, there are so many factors at play that are making it hard to do business in general, right? We have, devastating effects of war. We also have crazy inflation. We have companies, startups in particular, that have raised venture-backed capital in the last few years, and they're trying to live up to high valuations that have been set and, extortionate growth tactics. So it is a challenging time to be a marketer, but I will counteract that by saying it's also a very exciting time to be a marketer. And if you are somebody who is thinking, oh, my same old tactics that I'm constantly using aren't working as effectively anymore, hopefully you will get value from the tactics that we're about to share with you, and hopefully it'll give you a little bit of a source of inspiration going into 2024. So the first one I wanted to start with, Dan, is personal branding. I got one of those little profile badges from LinkedIn as a personal branding voice. So I will humble brag, but really it's a passion project of mine, because I think as marketers, we don't do a good enough job of marketing ourselves. And also, I see many CEOs, many business leaders who have started incredible companies, and they're not doing an effective job of marketing themselves and their business in a meaningful way. So some of the examples that come to mind of companies that are doing a really good job of personal branding, whether it's the marketers within their organization or their CEO or other, thought leaders, often it's whoever within your company is going to be interesting to your ideal customer persona is an ideal candidate for personal branding work. And Cognism is one of the companies I think that stands out hugely. The team is based here in the UK, where you and I are based, Dan. So maybe we're a little bit biased there, but hopefully anyone watching in the States has also seen the wonderful work of Cognism. A thing to call out that they've done this year, their CMO, Alice DeCourcy, hopefully I'm saying that right, Alice, wrote a book about being a first-time CMO, and then did a full-blown book launch as if she was, an author and working with a publishing house. So I thought that was really impressive, and curious to hear whether you also saw that on social, Dana, and what your thoughts are. Yes. So number 5 is brand activations. And I wanted to position this as brand activations rather than, event sponsorships or trade show sponsorship, because as a person who has worked on many different events throughout my career, I think the value of participating in an event is using it as an opportunity to activate your brand. So it's kind of like, if you think of like the Super Bowl, you will remember there are usually one or two brands that won the Super Bowl, right? And it's not the team, it's not really the team that's playing on the field, right? It's the advertisers that are really going to battle during the advertising breaks. So if you think of taking that approach to what is the equivalent of the Super Bowl within your industry, there's usually one or two huge trade shows or events that happen throughout the year. And you want to be that company that people are talking about during the trade show, after the trade show. And usually the way to do that is not, being the company that spent the most amount of money. It's usually the company that's most creative. So there are plenty of ways that companies can do this. I think, the more creative and unique, the better. But what we're seeing is companies that are doing pop-ups around these large trade shows is one of the strategies that I've seen very effective this year. So CrowdStrike is one of the biggest cybersecurity brands in the world. And they had a pop-up store outside of the Moscone Center in San Francisco during RSA conference, which is one of the biggest conferences in cybersecurity. And people were just buzzing around that pop-up. They got so much foot traffic. They used the location as an area to serve meals, to deliver content, to have sales meetings. And I think CrowdStrike probably got more value out of their pop-up shop than they did their booth on the trade show floor. So thinking about creative ways to capitalize on an event that doesn't just require, okay, we need to have the biggest booth or we need to spend the most money with the conference organizer.
So there you have it. That was some of the best bits from Demand Decoded in 2023. There were so many more clips that I could have added in there, which does make me incredibly proud of the information we're distributing through this podcast. And like I said at the start, if you have found any of this content helpful, a follow and a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify would be amazing. And I guess, we're excited to bring you even more content in 2024. So we'll see you there.